Hi, everyone. Robert Kanovich, Avero Advisors. I'm here with AV, here to do another discussion here in our famous crying room at headquarters. Uh, let's dive right into the topic. Why do we like working for housing authorities? Why do we like to specialize in them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons is that there's a huge need. They perform a very important function in society. They're looking after people that can't get their own housing temporarily or for a long time. And that's a major heavy lift. And we saw what happened in COVID, right? People losing their jobs, people losing their homes. And there was a lot of pressure on our housing authority clients to not only deliver services that they're supposed to, but also to keep up with the demand and ramp up in terms of processes and systems. And we saw firsthand through our clientele at the time that our services were very beneficial and pivotal to them.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed, first of all, when I got into working for housing authorities as project manager, is they have a lot of abandonment issues because they've had very poor service by consultants in the past. And so a lot of them have become um, super focused on what is your experience in housing authorities. And if you have none, you're not really going to get selected.
Right.
So going in there and realizing that I think a lot of consultants have failed to understand the intricacies of a housing authority. You know, all the areas that they cover, they have to be experts in public relations, in compliance, in cybersecurity, in public outreach. They have to be savvy in economic development, property management, all
Right.
these things that you initially think are just local government areas of expertise, but local government doesn't have to be an expert in all of those things.
Correct.
Housing authorities do, because they're sort of on their own, right?
Yeah.
They may be tied to a city, they might not be. They've got their own economic engine that they're using, they've got their own governance. How, in your experience, what has made them unique in comparison to even government clients that we've had?
Well, every housing authority is unique in itself. The industry is unique because of who they serve and what kind of compliance and HUD regulations they have to follow. They're not necessarily, even if they're a city department or somehow sponsored by a city, they still have to report an answer to HUD. HUD tells them how to deliver services. So that makes them unique. And then within that, there are several different flavors of housing authorities, right? And within that, there's several different flavors of services they offer. Do they have their own housing developments? Do they have Section 8? Are they MTW? All kinds of different variations exist. And even within that, there's different variations across the country. So there's not one typical housing authority, right? So when you go into it as a consultant that knows everything about housing authorities, you have to eat a little bit of crow, because everywhere you go, it's different. So providing software that works for a housing authority clearly is challenging, because not many players in the field, and those that have been incumbents for a while haven't done much to keep up with the times and keep up with their products, so that their products can now deliver better and more efficient services to their customers.
Yeah, that's a great point. Every time we get a new housing client, it's always a different flavor. Some are just strictly into property management. They're not really doing vouchers per se. Some are addressing several different entities in their region that they're serving. Either they're part of an economic development initiative. And one thing people don't realize is housing is not just for basic shelter for those who are in need. It's also incredibly important in areas like Silicon Valley, which is where some of our experience has been, where all you want to do is be able to get a workforce for economic opportunity in your organization, because the cost of living is so high in some of these areas. You have to subsidize housing or provide some housing assistance so that most of your workers can actually live within an hour or two of where your company is.
Exactly, and that's what we found in Silicon Valley. Most of our housing authority clients that worked at the housing authority were also recipients of housing at the lower levels, which was eye-opening. I mean, this is a problem you and I can't solve, right? This is a major problem. There's a lot of good policy that is trying to solve the problem of homelessness, and not just homelessness, but also people that can't afford housing in a major city. Forget major city, we have that problem here in Knoxville. So within the major problem, we're trying to solve a very minor problem of how do you make the housing authority itself more efficient and make sure that they have the right tools so they can not be inundated by paper and old processes and just duplicative processes, but they can actually deliver services in a more efficient manner.
Yeah, just even an area of housing like compliance varies so greatly between housing authorities. Some only have one or two people, some people have teams,
some don't
have that. An organization or a division that specializes just in writing policies and procedures and revising them as HUD changes or a new ERP system comes out and they want to take advantage of that. The structure and the governance is so different between all of them, and their targets and their goals and what they're looking to do is so varied. I think that's why a lot of consultants have failed in that space. Housing authority doesn't have 2 years for you to figure out all the ins and outs and define the requirements of the ERP system. You need to have, in my mind, you need to have a balance of understanding their processes, what actually drives the organization, at the same time having areas where you can take them to, which are practice improvements, improving efficiency, improving outreach to landlords, that you can address all these other areas that we're talking about. I think a lot of consultants either fail to understand it or they don't want to invest the time to understand that going into it. I'm not quite sure. I'm kind of baffled. What about your experiences? Told you where a lot of consultants fail.
Yeah, I think we need to define what a consultant is in the housing authority scheme of things, right? You have your Quadels and those consulting teams that focus on a specific piece of the operation.
Or like a Nan McKay.
Nan McKay will do compliance. They'll train you on they'll train you on how to do inspections, and it's a very siloed approach. Of course, they've made a business and a living out of doing that. They do great work in those silos. But when it comes to systems and overall business practices and processes, I don't think anyone's made an impact. I don't think anyone's focused on it as much as we do, where we're looking at, how does an older system hamper you? How does a newer system, how is it supposed to make you more efficient? How do you go after acquiring and implementing it? And even within those areas, right, your software vendors have failed at one, keeping up with the times, as I've said, but also paying attention to the client's needs.
So let's continue to talk about the different types of consulting firms, the ones that actually specialize in some parts of housing, what they can offer, and again, going on the theme of, why do a lot of consulting firms fail to understand housing operations when they bid on them?
Yeah, it's not just consultants, right? Because you have specific specialized consultants. Nan McKay, Quadel, they do specific things, they do them well. Systems consultants, if they're going at it from just understanding the current system and modernizing it, that's a failure, because you're not trying to understand that the housing authority put in the existing system maybe 30 years ago. They haven't done anything with it. The system vendor has not kept up with the times and it's not modernized. So now you have layers and layers of workarounds and Excel sheets that actually help this agency do its business. On the flip side, you have not many software vendors paying attention or interested in the housing authority market. It's like it doesn't exist, right? And we saw that in 2020 when Congress passed the act that led to the ERAP funding, right? Emergency Rental Assistance Program that was handed out to major counties across the country. And HUD also asked, or rather Treasury said, we need you to report back on the distribution of these funds in a very specific manner. The problem was the systems didn't exist, right? So in a panic, our clients and a lot of agencies we know went to the first available system that was being built on their backs, meaning these vendors had no idea what was going on at the policy level, at the distribution level, what was going on the ground. So we were in that situation trying to help our clients understand how to make these systems work. So I think it was a huge missed opportunity for a lot of the software vendors out there that didn't anticipate or jump in to try and help these agencies. So my point in telling you this is, I think it's an underserved market. other than us, I don't think anyone is paying attention to the actual inner workings of a housing authority. That, it's common between housing authorities and cities and other clients that we serve. It's the common thread. What is going to make you more efficient so that you don't have to go hire more people or spend more money on doing the same inefficient processes.
Yeah, even last night at dinner, we were talking to some friends and colleagues about a major player in the ERP market, which doesn't really do housing, and it's two things that I can't understand why we can't bridge that disconnect. It's a large ERP system should be able to handle a lot of housing authorities, so we figure it should be fairly easy to play in that space. As complicated as it is, we've been able to figure it out. That's how we were able to help clients. So logically, the software company can do it. And at the same time, there's also a lot of housing authorities that they go after the same 2 or 3 vendors because, the housing authority across the bay is using this, or the one that the executive director had at their last place. They decide they want to bring that over, and a lot of times I don't think they really look into what they're getting in the system in terms of, am I getting the right modules? Am I getting the right support? Did I actually implement this correctly? I think they just assume that, well, this is good enough, and because sometimes they don't have anything to compare it to, or why would I try and compare this to a private sector operation? They just go, well, my landlords get paid and people get housed. Why should I care? About whether the system is efficient or not. And we had the opportunity to take a look at that several years ago with our client in the Bay Area. And they really brought us in at the right time. And let's talk about that. The right time for when you should be engaging some expertise like ours. In this case, it was when they just were starting to think, I think we need to go out and get a new ERP system. But their approach was, let's see if we can re-leverage this possibly. We know that we're going to have to stay with it in the short term at least, even if we go to a new system. Let's figure out what is the problem with the software, what's our process issues, and what our training issues are. And at the same time, had us take over that vendor relationship, running the help desk, help them with some IT things. That really is the ideal time to do this, because you potentially could either salvage your investment or you get all your ducks in a row to make a new ERP selection very successful. Why don't they do more of that? Is that just a simple outreach thing? And I know that's common to a lot of our ERP clients.
I think the perception of lack of choice, and again, we say this to all of our prospects and clients, they all have day jobs. They're executive directors, they are running very large departments within housing authorities. This isn't something that you do unless something's broken or someone's asking you to do it or the vendor's pulling the plug. So there has to be a specific trigger. In that case, it was a set of very smart professionals at that agency that started asking the right questions with our help, right? They had an incumbent vendor. They had been around for 20, 30 years. And the simple question was, why aren't we in the cloud? Why is this vendor still hogging server space? Why do we have servers and a data center in our building? And in the absence of competent professionals or consultants that are there to answer real questions with real answers, I think there's a hesitance to ask those questions. Because one, if they ask the question to a super technical CIO or a technical consultant, are they going to understand the answers that come back? And I think there's a fear of looking bad or embarrassment, or just a reluctance to get into that conversation. And then when you do ask that question, for example, in that client's case, when they started asking us questions and we told them in a non-judgmental way how this should be, that's, I think, what gave them the confidence to probe further and overcome some things and uncover some things that they suspected were wrong or not with the times, and that it was time to just lean on us as an independent third-party partner, because in that specific case they weren't getting the right answers out of IT.
So let's dive into the actual ERP definition for a few moments and talk about what is common with housing authorities and what is actually different, because things like financials, HR, even property management and work order are not uncommon for a lot of ERP systems,
Right.
and local governments who are using that. So what do you see as like the common things that should be easily understood across the industry versus things that are housing specific? We'll get to those in a minute.
Yeah, I think primarily ERP, financial ERP has the same modules. You have general ledger, you have the ability to do payments, receive money, track grants, manage vendors, cut checks, do payroll, manage your HR employees. All of that's common between a housing authority or a city or a county. Now, with housing authorities, they also have housing operations. Obviously, they own property. They have Section 8 vouchers, housing choice vouchers, and special programs. They take care of people's self-sufficiency. So all of that needs to be tracked in addition to having your financial operations be, buttoned down. So what we've seen so far is every system that's out there that's providing services to housing authorities either have the whole package or they're only doing housing specific things. So in your experience working with housing authorities, what are some of the special modules for housing authorities?
I was just even thinking, we've recently talked about how we would like to see AI leveraged in a lot of ERP.
Mm-hmm.
We experience it in our personal lives already.
Yeah.
A lot of people are just leveraging it for fun things, for hobbies, even for artistic reasons.
Yeah.
Write me a song, create a photo for me that is completely AI generated.
Yeah.
We should be asking the same things of a lot of these ERPs. And in housing, I think especially because you're dealing with tenants and even landlords that they're not a specialty in HUD. They don't know any of these regulations.
Mm-hmm.
They just want to get paid for leasing out this property, or the tenant just wants to get housed.
Yeah.
There really should be a way to leverage AI in a lot of these ERP platforms, especially for housing, where someone doesn't have to, and I'll use an example. One of the clients that we've had recently, in fact, almost all of them, they have to train their tenants in how to use the portal. They
Mm-hmm.
also have to train their vendors in how to use the portals,
Right.
and their landlord.
Right.
Why would we need to continue with that when AI should be leveraged to solve a lot of these things? And I think you and I have seen this in local government too, where it's just a prompt and you type in what you want to know.
Yeah.
And it answers it for you, much like when you're dealing with an artificial agent for rescheduling your airline ticket or something.
I wish they would work better, but I think it's coming. With ERP systems, I'm really excited about two things. One is natural language reporting, where internal operations, like if the CEO wants to get a report out of IT,
yes,
you would have to explain to the IT report writer who's unionized the one-page report I need as the CEO, and then that IT person will go research, think about it, try to figure out, and it takes months. Even if it's successful, right? It's months away. So with AI and generative AI, I think the biggest opportunity in ERPs is natural language querying, where I can just ask it. I can ask the system, how many people did we house last year in a specific development? Or how many people within a certain age group of a certain gender are still on our wait list? And how does that compare to available housing units in our system? So as the CEO, as the executive director, I am about to have that ability in the next 6 to 12 months, as long as they modernize their systems and accept and embrace these technologies. The second thing I'm excited about is the end user, like the person looking for housing, right? One is access to information. Can they read English? Is your information available on the website? And do they have to call you and stay on hold for
to find
an
that
hour?
One person who speaks Korean.
Exactly. Or just to even ask a simple question. All of those things are, today you can automate them through OpenAI or generative AI of any flavor, where the more progressive housing authorities will plug those things into an existing database, close it up so it's not out in the wild, that you're not giving access to your data to the rest of the world, within the parameters of keeping PII hidden and confidential. AI will then go in and seek those answers for the person seeking housing. So that has several different levels of impact, right? First, your wait time went down, your frustration levels have gone down. You're already, distressed because you're seeking public housing or assisted housing. And on the housing authority operations side, you don't have to staff with so many people just to man phones or the chat window. If you're still doing it on a manual basis, that's still, it's a bottleneck, it's redundant. So AI within ERPs will have tremendous impact on customer service, on the customer side and the delivery side. And I think on the executive side, natural language querying, I can't wait for it. Like for ourselves, we use our ERP system. Of course, it's got pre-baked reports in it, but I just want to ask Siri.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up even language in general, because one of our housing authority clients translates everything into 20 different languages.
Yeah.
Everything that comes out of ERP in terms of a letter or some sort of a form that has to be filled out and signed, they're using services to translate that and then reloading into the system. Mm-hmm. And it's not a native part of that ERP system in particular. So there's always a barrier. There's always quality control issues that have to be managed, user fields, things like that. But even one thing that's unique to housing authorities and not so much local government is you're also trying to house a lot of people who are homeless. They don't have access to technology. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out a way to put a piece of technology in front of them in some cases, and it can't be anything complicated because this person probably hasn't spent a lot of time with the computer or may or may not even have the phone. And another thing that housing authorities are very compliant on is ADA compliant websites and portals. Yeah. So dealing with a variety of people that have varying disabilities, again, you can't have a very complicated website. It has to be very easy to use and it has to be intuitive. I think that's another area where a lot of traditional ERP vendors have missed the boat on. Is being able to serve the entire citizenry that is going to be able to use your services, and not just a select few who can, have the convenience of using their smartphone, sitting at their house to get everything transacted. Yeah. So one area I want to talk about that is very closely related to my background is the information technology that we see in public housing. I think the overall structure is not different from what we usually see. It's the same story. There's usually too few in terms of IT staff. They might not be getting all the funding that they need for a variety of reasons. But we do always run into roadblocks that come out of the existing technology in the organization where we're looking at ERP, and there's always ways around that. But what do we traditionally have to do? Like what's one of the first things we usually have to do when looking at IT for housing?
Yeah, I think we need to stop thinking about ERP and housing management software as an IT project. Just because it has the word software in it doesn't make it an IT project. IT is critical in an ERP implementation. They have to make sure that their infrastructure is top-notch, you have the right bandwidth, that you have the right security, because most ERP systems now, they're not offering on-prem solutions. You can't ask for and buy a solution that sits in your building. You are going to go get a SaaS product, which is hosted somewhere else. So what that means is you have to have strong IT that makes sure you have the right bandwidth, that you're not waiting on a screen to load, that your computers can access the vendor's computers, which may be in another city across the country. And second thing is they have to be secure. When you open up your window to access a SaaS product, you have to make sure that no other bad things come in your network. So 2 or 3 basic things, and then desktop support, right? If your printer is not working, if you forgot your password, of course there are automated tools to do that, but IT's job has significantly changed to those 3 or 4 very critical elements that they should focus on. So when an ERP replacement project that is trying to replace a 20-year-old system with something newer, negotiating with the vendor, contracting, doing the RFP process, selecting the right vendor, most of the time these are outside of scope of IT in the modern workplace. Not just in terms of function, but also understanding of deep in important aspects of the business processes. How do you expect a network engineer that has now become the CIO or an IT director to deeply understand HUD compliance processes? And that's what it comes down to. So our recommendation always is absolutely involve IT. Don't make them lead it. It has to be led by the line of business. Somebody on the executive team needs to take this on.
Yeah, it's just from the simple fact that your IT department is not the end user, like you're talking about. And at the same time, they already have those day jobs that they're struggling with because they're either under-resourced, understaffed in this current job market, because housing authorities often struggle to pay good salaries for IT. Mm-hmm. So you're already behind, and now this ERP thing's been thrown in your lap. You know, let us handle that for you. Because one of the things we also do is we like to do a cybersecurity audit, no matter what phase we're brought into. So even if someone's made a selection, we still want to look at your cybersecurity. And I like that our goal is not just to beat you over the head and say you've been bad at your cybersecurity. We show you how to turn that around and get that ready on a short timeline so you can continue to procure your ERP system or implement it. Yeah. And most importantly, it's the vendor needs to know what your cybersecurity stance is going in. It needs to be into the contract language, it needs to be clearly defined, because housing authorities have a lot of compliance, especially with PII. Mm-hmm. Don't just assume the vendor's got a handle on this or that they understand what your personal requirements are as a housing authority to the feds or to the state, or just even dealing with healthcare information. You need to define that. You need to have a discussion with your vendor so that they know that you're serious about this and there needs to be consequences or assurances that you are holding up those standards and not putting the housing authority or the people it serves, their information at risk.
Yeah, and it also goes back to procurement, like you said, right? And we have a lot of content about how to procure an ERP system. And those videos and that content applies to housing authorities also. The problem is they have less choice. It's not like the whole market's open to them. So when a vendor that looks good, smells good, is shiny, presents a proposal, the assumption is that this is probably the best thing that's happened to us. Let's sign and get away with it, get on with it and implement the product. But in our experience, the reading between the lines and the nuances of that proposal are something to be looked at, right? A most recent example we talked about last week was the vendor, who is a major provider of software to housing authorities, proposed a $300,000 implementation, similar pricing for per year software fees, and they had only 240 hours for a 1-year implementation as professional services. That's less than 20 hours a week, right? Your IT department has full-time jobs. Everyone has full-time jobs. And on kickoff day, typically this vendor will tell you that, well, you need to go get a third party to do project management, another third party to do configuration, report writing, testing, all of the hardcore implementation stuff. And those things are not typically disclosed upfront. And a big reason is that no one knows how to ask these questions. They assume that the vendor will sell us the product, come and implement it, and we'll be fine within 12 months. A lot of the work is on the housing authority, no matter what vendor you pick. And again, they have day jobs, so they need third parties to come in and assist, which isn't a bad thing to do because you're gonna buy your desired outcome or flail at it and fail at it.
Yeah, it's important for the leadership at a housing authority to understand that as a CIO, you're not an expert on all things. So you're not a workflow expert. You're not even a cybersecurity expert.
Right.
I mean, when you work for one environment and you serve that one environment for multiple years, you naturally become siloed because you could spend your entire working day just staying on top of cybersecurity things going on in the industry and never get to your help desk or never be able to get to the C-suite meetings where you make important decisions about technology. So the organization should not put the burden on the CIO. And if you're the CIO, there are ways to clearly delineate through good project management what is your logical responsibility and what really should be passed on to a vendor or someone like us to handle for you, leveraging our experience in the industry to not only save time on the project, but also save money and also give the CIO a little bit of a break. Because like I said, they've already got they're running 100, 200, 300 help desk tickets per week. The last thing they need to do is start going to 7 more meetings a week, dealing with the implementation vendor and dealing with their leadership, just to sort out something that really could just be passed on to professional project management to run, get set up for you, and then leave.
Right.
Or stay long term. We've talked about that too. The ability to manage ERP implementations long term, keep policies current, keep your staff trained, help facilitate focus groups that help deal with HUD regulation changes or HUD requirements. Those are absolutely opportunities as well that professional services outside your organization can do a really good job on.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, AV. Appreciate the conversation on housing authorities, and need anything else, reach out to us.